Introduction. Overview of the trial by Franz Kafka. The Trial by Franz Kafka, written in 1914 and published posthumously in 1925, is a seminal work of 20th-century literature that delves into themes of existential dread, bureaucratic absurdity, and the opaque nature of justice. The novel follows Josef K, a bank clerk who is suddenly arrested one morning for an unspecified crime. Throughout the book, Josef K struggles to navigate a convoluted and incomprehensible legal system, reflecting Kafka's critique of the impersonal and dehumanizing nature of modern bureaucracies. The novel is a profound exploration of the individual's helplessness in the face of an overpowering and faceless authority. Kafka's work has been interpreted in various ways, including as a critique of totalitarianism, a reflection of his own personal anxieties, and an existential commentary on the human condition. Chapter 1. The Arrest. The novel opens with Josef K being abruptly woken up in his apartment by two warders, Franz and Willem, who inform him that he is under arrest. The crime for which he is being arrested is never specified, and the warders themselves seem to have little knowledge of the nature of his offense. This initial encounter sets the tone for the novel, highlighting the absurdity and confusion that will characterize Josef K's interactions with the legal system. Key concepts. 1. Absurdity of the bureaucratic system. The arrest scene exemplifies the illogical and arbitrary nature of the bureaucratic process. Josef K is arrested without being informed of his crime, and the officials involved seem indifferent to his plight. 2. Loss of control. Josef K experiences a profound loss of control over his life, symbolized by the sudden and inexplicable arrest. This sets the stage for his ongoing struggle against a system that seems to operate without reason or justice. 3. Incomprehensible authority. The warders represent a faceless authority that is both omnipotent and opaque. Josef K's inability to understand the reason for his arrest reflects the broader theme of the individual's powerlessness in the face of an incomprehensible system. Important quotes. 1. Someone must have been telling lies about Josef K. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but one morning he was arrested. 2. It was as if he were being condemned without having had a chance to defend himself. Key lessons. The novel explores the idea that individuals can be caught up in systems beyond their understanding or control, leading to a sense of helplessness and despair. Kafka's portrayal of the bureaucratic system highlights the dangers of dehumanization and the loss of individual rights in the face of an overpowering authority. The opening chapter sets the tone for the novel's exploration of existential themes, particularly the struggle to find meaning and justice in an absurd world. Chapter 2. First Interrogation. In this chapter, Josef K receives a summons to appear for his first interrogation. He arrives at a dilapidated building, where he encounters a chaotic and disorganized court. The interrogation itself is more of a farce, with the officials seeming uninterested in the truth. Josef K tries to assert his innocence, but his arguments are met with indifference or hostility. The chapter highlights the surreal and Kafkaesque nature of the legal proceedings. Key concepts. 1. The illusion of justice. The courtroom scene reveals the arbitrary and capricious nature of the legal system. The court seems more interested in maintaining its own power than in delivering justice. 2. Alienation and isolation. Josef K feels increasingly alienated from the world around him. His attempts to assert his innocence only deepen his sense of isolation, as he realizes that the court is uninterested in his perspective. 3. Powerlessness. Josef K's powerlessness in the face of the court's authority is emphasized throughout the chapter. Despite his attempts to defend himself, he is unable to influence the outcome of the proceedings. Important quotes. 1. You must realize that I am not guilty. It is a mistake. How could I be guilty? And even if I were guilty, I could not be held responsible. 2. The proceedings are going to be kept secret not only from the general public but from you too. Key lessons. The chapter underscores the futility of seeking justice in a system that is fundamentally unjust. Josef K's efforts to clear his name are met with resistance at every turn. Kafka's portrayal of the courtroom as a chaotic and absurd space reflects his broader critique of bureaucratic systems that dehumanize individuals and obscure the truth. The chapter also explores themes of alienation and isolation, as Josef K becomes increasingly disconnected from the world around him. Chapter 3. In the Empty Courtroom. In this chapter, Josef K returns to the courtroom on a Sunday, only to find it empty. He explores the building and discovers that it is a labyrinthine structure, filled with dark and oppressive spaces. Josef K meets a student named Bertold and a judge's wife, who provide him with some insights into the workings of the court. However, the more Josef K learns, the more confused and disoriented he becomes. Key concepts. 1. The labyrinthine nature of bureaucracy. The empty courtroom and the confusing layout of the building symbolize the complexity and opacity of the bureaucratic system. Josef K's exploration of the building reflects his futile attempt to navigate this system. 2. The absence of justice. The empty courtroom is a powerful metaphor for the absence of justice in Josef K's world. The legal system is portrayed as a hollow and meaningless structure, devoid of any real substance or purpose. 3. Descent into confusion. Josef K's growing confusion and disorientation reflect his increasing sense of powerlessness. The more he tries to understand the system, the more lost he becomes. Important quotes. 1. The court wants nothing from you. It receives you when you come and it dismisses you when you go. 2. The proceedings are not public. They are kept secret not only from the public but also from you. Key lessons. The empty courtroom symbolizes the futility of seeking justice in a system that is inherently unjust. Josef K's efforts to understand the court only lead to greater confusion and despair. Kafka's portrayal of the legal system as a labyrinthine and oppressive structure reflects his broader critique of bureaucratic systems that obscure the truth and dehumanize individuals. The chapter also explores themes of alienation and isolation, as Josef K becomes increasingly disconnected from the world around him. Chapter 4. The Whipper. In this chapter, Josef K returns to the bank where he works and finds that two of the warders, Franz and Willem, are being whipped in a storage room as punishment for their mistreatment of him during his arrest. Despite his initial shock and horror, Josef K ultimately decides not to intervene, choosing instead to leave the room and return to his work. This scene highlights the brutality and inhumanity of the legal system, as well as Josef K's growing sense of helplessness and resignation. Key concepts. 1. Brutality of the legal system. The whipping scene is a stark reminder of the brutality and inhumanity of the legal system. The warders are punished not for any real crime, but for their failure to properly carry out their duties. 2. Moral ambiguity. Josef K's decision not to intervene in the whipping reflects the moral ambiguity of his situation. He is torn between his desire to help the warders and his fear of becoming further entangled in the legal system. 3. Resignation and helplessness. Josef K's growing sense of resignation and helplessness is evident in this chapter. Despite his initial horror, he ultimately chooses to do nothing, reflecting his increasing sense of powerlessness. Important quotes. 1. What have they done to deserve that? It's a disgrace. 2. He walked past the storage room, slowly shaking his head and whispering to himself, "It is all absurd." Key lessons. The whipping scene highlights the brutality and inhumanity of the legal system, which punishes individuals arbitrarily and without reason. Josef K's decision not to intervene reflects the moral ambiguity of his situation and his growing sense of helplessness and resignation. Kafka's portrayal of the legal system as a cruel and arbitrary force underscores the novel's themes of alienation, powerlessness, and the absurdity of modern life. Chapter 5. The uncle, Lenny. In this chapter, Josef K. is visited by his uncle, who is deeply concerned about the legal proceedings against him. The uncle takes Josef K. to see a lawyer named Huld, who is bedridden and seems to wield considerable influence within the court. During their visit, Josef K. meets Lenny, the lawyer's nurse, who expresses a romantic interest in him. The chapter further explores the labyrinthine nature of the legal system and Josef K.'s increasing entanglement in it. Key concepts. 1. Influence and corruption. The character of Huld represents the influence and corruption that pervade the legal system. Despite his bedridden state, Huld seems to have significant power within the court, highlighting the opaque and arbitrary nature of the system. 2. The futility of legal defense. Josef K.'s interactions with Huld and Lenny underscore the futility of his attempts to defend himself. The legal system is portrayed as a closed and self-perpetuating system that offers little hope for justice. 3. Seduction and manipulation. Lenny's advances toward Josef K. symbolize the seductive and manipulative nature of the legal system. Her interest in Josef K. serves as a distraction from his legal troubles, pulling him further into the labyrinth of the court's influence. Important quotes. 1. It's only when you admit your own guilt that you will be able to defend yourself. 2. She had attracted him by her eyes, by the way she moved, by the way she stood by the door. Key lessons. The chapter illustrates the corrupt and manipulative forces within the legal system, as seen through Huld's influence and Lenny's seduction. Josef K.'s growing entanglement with the court and his interactions with Lenny emphasize the futility and absurdity of his attempts to navigate the legal system. The chapter reinforces the novel's themes of powerlessness and the erosion of individual autonomy in the face of an overpowering and incomprehensible bureaucracy. Chapter 6. The lawyer, the factory owner, the painter. Josef K. continues to struggle with his legal troubles and becomes increasingly frustrated with Huld's handling of his case. He meets with a factory owner who introduces him to a painter named Titarelli, who is said to have connections within the court. Josef K. visits Titarelli in his studio, where he learns more about the workings of the court and the different types of acquittal that can be obtained. However, it becomes clear that even these so-called acquittals offer little hope of true freedom. Key concepts. 1. The illusion of acquittal. Titarelli explains that there are 3 types of acquittal: definite acquittal, apparent acquittal, and protraction, each of which is fraught with uncertainty and ultimately does not guarantee true freedom. This reinforces the idea that the legal system is a closed loop with no real escape. 2. The corrupt nature of the court. Titarelli's descriptions of the court's operations reveal the deeply corrupt and arbitrary nature of the legal system. The court's power is all-encompassing, and even those with connections within the system are unable to influence its outcomes meaningfully. 3. Art as a reflection of bureaucracy. Titarelli's profession as a painter symbolizes the way art reflects and distorts reality. His paintings, which depict the court in various ways, serve as metaphors for the incomprehensible and distorted nature of the legal system. Important quotes. 1. There are 3 possibilities for acquittal: definite acquittal, apparent acquittal, and protraction. 2. The court's power is inescapable. It doesn't forgive, nor does it forget. Key lessons. The types of acquittal described by Titarelli highlight the futility of seeking justice within an inherently corrupt and arbitrary legal system. The chapter emphasizes the idea that the legal system operates in a way that is inaccessible and incomprehensible to ordinary individuals, leaving them trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty. Kafka uses the painter Titarelli and his art to illustrate the distorted reality imposed by the bureaucratic system, further underscoring the novel's themes of alienation and the absurdity of the human condition. Chapter 7. The Cathedral. In this chapter, Josef K. is summoned to meet a client at a cathedral. Upon arriving, he finds that the cathedral is empty, except for a priest who begins to speak to him. The priest tells Josef K. a parable known as Before the Law, which serves as a reflection on the inaccessibility of justice and the futility of attempting to gain entry into the law. The parable has a profound effect on Josef K., deepening his sense of hopelessness and despair. Key concepts. 1. The parable of Before the Law. The priest's parable tells the story of a man who spends his entire life waiting at the door of the law, only to discover at the end of his life that the door was meant for him alone, and now it will be closed forever. This parable encapsulates the central themes of the novel: alienation, the inaccessibility of justice, and the absurdity of the human condition. 2. The inaccessibility of justice. The parable and the setting of the cathedral emphasize the idea that justice is something distant, almost sacred, yet ultimately unreachable for ordinary people like Josef K. 3. Existential despair. Josef K's encounter with the priest and the parable further his existential crisis, as he comes to realize the hopelessness of his situation. The chapter symbolizes his growing awareness of the futility of his struggle against the court. Important quotes. 1. The door was meant only for you. Now I am going to shut it. 2. It is not necessary to accept everything as true. One must only accept it as necessary. Key lessons. The parable of Before the Law illustrates the central themes of the novel, particularly the inaccessibility of justice and the futility of seeking entry into a system that is designed to be incomprehensible. Josef K's growing sense of despair and alienation highlights the existential nature of Kafka's work, as the protagonist comes to understand the absurdity and meaninglessness of his struggle. The chapter emphasizes the idea that the legal system, much like the law in the parable, is an unattainable and abstract concept that ultimately leads to despair rather than resolution. Chapter 8. The End. The novel concludes with Josef K's final confrontation with the legal system. On the evening of his 31st birthday, two men arrive at his apartment to escort him to an abandoned quarry outside the city. Without any explanation, they prepare to execute him. Josef K. makes a feeble attempt to resist but ultimately submits, reflecting on his life and the absurdity of his situation. In his final moments, he is struck down, dying like a dog, a phrase that encapsulates the dehumanization and senselessness of his fate. Key concepts. 1. The absurdity of existence. The final chapter underscores the novel's central theme of absurdity. Josef K's death, devoid of any real cause or justification, reflects the senselessness and meaninglessness of existence within a dehumanizing system. 2. Dehumanization. Josef K's execution is conducted without ceremony or dignity, emphasizing the dehumanization that occurs within the bureaucratic system. His death is described as that of an animal, highlighting the complete erosion of his humanity. 3. Resignation to fate. Josef K's final moments reflect his resignation to his fate. Despite the injustice of his situation, he no longer has the strength or will to resist, symbolizing the ultimate triumph of the oppressive system over the individual. Important quotes. 1. Like a dog, he said, it was as if the shame of it must outlive him. 2. But the hands of one of the partners were already at Josef K's throat, while the other pushed the knife deep into his heart and twisted it there, twice. Key lessons. The novel's conclusion reinforces Kafka's exploration of the absurdity and meaninglessness of life within a dehumanizing and incomprehensible system. Josef K's death serves as a powerful symbol of the ultimate failure of the individual to assert autonomy or find justice within a corrupt and arbitrary legal system. The final chapter leaves the reader with a sense of despair and futility, as Josef K. meets his end without resolution or understanding, highlighting the existential themes that permeate Kafka's work. Conclusion. The trial's exploration of existentialism and bureaucratic absurdity. The trial is a profound exploration of the human condition, reflecting the existentialist themes of alienation, absurdity, and the search for meaning in a world governed by incomprehensible forces. Kafka's portrayal of Josef K's struggle against a faceless and dehumanizing legal system serves as a powerful critique of modern bureaucracies and the erosion of individual autonomy. Throughout the novel, Kafka delves into the themes of powerlessness, the inaccessibility of justice, and the futility of resistance against an all-encompassing system. The novel's ambiguous and open-ended nature invites various interpretations, from a critique of totalitarianism to an existential commentary on the absurdity of life. In the end, the trial leaves readers with a sense of unease and contemplation, challenging them to reflect on the nature of justice, the role of the individual in society, and the existential struggle for meaning in an often incomprehensible world. Kafka's work remains a timeless and relevant exploration of the human experience, resonating with readers across generations and cultures.